Today's story is titled The ShapeShifter of Bayou St. John. The story takes place on the outskirts of New Orleans mostly and slowly makes its way into town. I hope you enjoy the story. People think New Orleans gets quiet after midnight. It doesn't. The city just changes its voice. The traffic thins out, the music from the quarters becomes a distant murmur, porch lights click off one by one, and along Bayou St. John, the water turns black enough to reflect things that sometimes aren't standing above it. My name is Ray Broussard, and for most of my life I thought stories about things changing their shape were just stories. That changed one August night. It was a little after 2 in the morning when I first saw it. I had been fishing near Bayou St. John, something I'd done hundreds of times. The night was hot and still. Not even the mosquitoes seemed interested in moving. I remember hearing a dog barking somewhere across the water, 3 short barks, then silence. A few seconds later, I heard somebody call my name. Ray! I turned around. Nobody was there. I stood there listening. Then it came again. Hey, Ray! This time it came from across the bayou, and I recognized the voice. It belonged to my old friend, Danny LeBlanc. There was only one problem. Danny had been dead for 6 years. I packed my fishing gear fast. I wasn't interested in finding out how something across the water knew Danny's voice. Then I heard footsteps behind me, bare feet slapping against the damp ground. I turned. A man was standing about 50 yards down the bank. First I couldn't see his face. He was too far from the street light. Ray? Danny's voice again. The man stepped forward, and for one terrible second, I thought it was really Danny. Same height, same narrow shoulders, same way he leaned slightly to the left when he walked. Then he stepped beneath the light. His face wasn't finished. That's the only way I know how to describe it. The eyes were Danny's. The mouth almost was. But the nose looked flattened, and the skin around the cheeks seemed to move as I watched it, like wet clay being worked by invisible fingers. I dropped my tackle box. The thing smiled. Then it spoke in my voice. Don't run. I ran. I didn't tell anybody what happened. Who would believe me? For the next 3 nights, nothing else happened. Then somebody knocked on my front door at 3:17 in the morning. 3 knocks. Slow. Knock, knock, knock. I lived alone. I walked quietly into the living room and looked through the blinds. My brother Paul was standing on the porch. Ray, open the door. I nearly did. Then I remembered Paul was working offshore. He wasn't even in Louisiana. Ray, Paul's voice sounded perfect. Come on, man, open up. I backed away. The doorknob turned, but it was locked. Then the thing outside stopped pretending. Its voice changed. Paul, Danny, a woman, a child, and then me. One voice after another. Finally it whispered, I only need to see you. Finally it whispered, I only need to see you. Something scratched slowly down the south side of the door. I stayed awake until sunrise. Something scratched slowly down the outside of the door. I stayed awake until sunrise. When I finally went outside, there were 4 long scratches through the paint, and lying on the porch was a dead nutria. Its body was untouched, but its face looked wrong. As stupid as it sounds, it almost seemed human. That's when I went to see an old man named Auguste, who lived near the bayou. People around there called him crazy. Auguste listened without interrupting. When I finished, he stared at me for a long time. Then he asked, "Did it speak in the voice of somebody dead?" "Yeah." His face changed. "You got yourself a borrower." "A what?" That's what my grandfather called them. They borrow voices first, then movements, then faces. I laughed nervously. "You telling me that thing can turn into people?" Auguste shook his head. "No, I'm telling you, it can become what it remembers." That answer bothered me even more. "Why me?" "Because you looked at it." He leaned closer, and it looked back. Auguste told me the stories went back generations. Fishermen seeing their wives standing beside the water when their wives were home asleep. Children hearing their mothers calling from beneath a bridge. Men disappearing after following somebody they loved into the darkness. The borrower didn't simply imitate people, it studied them. Every time you saw it, it learned something else. Your walk, your expressions, your voice, your memories, and eventually, your face. How do I stop it? Auguste looked toward the window. You don't. 2 nights later, I saw myself standing across Bayou St. John. Same shirt, same jeans, same face. It waved at me. I didn't move. It waved again. Then it smiled. I wasn't smiling. That's when I understood. It had finished learning me. I backed toward my truck. The other Ray began walking along the opposite bank, not running, walking, keeping pace with me. I reached the truck and pulled open the door. Across the water, the thing stopped. Then it shouted, "Ray!" My voice, perfect now. I climbed inside. And then another voice came from directly behind my truck. "Don't leave me." It was Danny. I looked into the rearview mirror. He was standing 10 feet behind me. But when my headlights caught him, Danny's body changed. His shoulders widened, his arms lengthened, his jaw pushed forward. For a moment, it dropped on all fours, then it rose again, this time wearing my face. I slammed the truck into gear. I stayed away from Bayou St. John for almost a month. Then Auguste disappeared. Police found his front door open. Nothing stolen, no blood, no sign of a struggle. There was only one strange thing. His bathroom mirror had been covered with a blanket. 3 days later, I received a phone call. "Ray?" "Auguste?" I nearly dropped the phone. "Where are you?" A long silence. Then, "Come to the bayou." I hung up. The phone rang again. I didn't answer. Again, and again. Finally, it stopped. A minute later, somebody knocked on my door. 3 slow knocks. I grabbed the old shotgun beside the bedroom wall. "Who's there?" Auguste answered. "Ray." "Don't open the door." I froze. Then another. Auguste spoke from the backyard. "Ray, whatever you do, don't listen to him." "Ray, whatever you do, don't listen to him." I stood between the 2 voices. One at the front, one behind the house. Then both voices began laughing. Exactly together. I left through a side window. I went back to Bayou St. John before daylight. Maybe that was stupid. Maybe I was tired of being hunted. Fog covered the water. I stood near the place where I'd first seen it. "Come on," I shouted. Nothing. Then someone stepped from behind a cypress tree. Me. Another figure appeared further down. Danny. Then Paul. Then Auguste. 4 people standing silently along the river. Every one of them smiled, their mouths open, and all 4 spoke with my voice. Which one are you? I raised the shotgun. The figures began chaining, faces melting into faces. Old men, women, children, people I knew, people I'd never seen. Then finally the shapes collapsed into one. It was tall, much taller than a man. Its arms hung almost to its knees. Gray skin stretched across a bayou. Gray skin stretched across a body that seemed unable to decide what it wanted to be. Faces moved beneath its skin. Danny, August, me. Then something with no face at all. The borrower stepped toward me. I fired. It fell backward into the bayou. The water exploded around it. Then everything became still. I waited. Nothing came back up. That was 11 years ago. I moved away from Bayou St. John. I don't fish there. I don't drive beside it at night. I never answer my door after 3 in the morning. But last week something changed. I was sitting in my kitchen when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I answered. Nobody spoke. I could hear water, slow water. Then somebody whispered, "Ray?" My own voice. I hung up. A few seconds later, 3 knocks came from the front door. I didn't move. Then I heard something outside walking away. Bare feet slapping against the pavement. I waited until morning before opening the door. Nothing was there except wet footprints. They started at my porch, crossed the yard, and disappeared into the street. But there was something about those tracks I'll never forget. They weren't leading away from my house. They were leading toward it. And mixed among them was another set of footprints. My footprints. Same size, same worn spot on the right heel, everything identical. So if you're ever around Bayou St. John late at night and somebody you know calls your name from across the water, don't answer. And if you see somebody standing beneath a streetlight who looks exactly like you, don't let it see your face any longer than it already has. Because the old people around the bayou were wrong about one thing. The borrower doesn't borrow your face, it keeps it. And once it learns you well enough, it doesn't need you anymore. So if you're enjoying these stories, please like, subscribe, leave a comment and hit that thumbs up. It helps more than you know. Now I'll continue with the story. It had been 4 years since the footprints appeared outside my house. 4 years since I'd heard my own voice whisper my name through the telephone. And almost 15 years since I fired that shotgun into the thing people around the Bayou St. John once called the borrower. For a while I convinced myself it was over. That's something people do when they're scared. Give enough time to something terrible, and eventually you start changing the memory. Maybe the fog made me see these things. Maybe August filled my head with old stories. Maybe the man across Bayou St. John never really had my face. Maybe there had been a reasonable explanation for all of it. I almost believed that. Then one Saturday afternoon, I walked into a little hardware store on Magazine Street, and I saw a dead man buying nails. His back was toward me. Gray work shirt, faded jeans, thin shoulders. Nothing unusual. Then he turned his head. Danny LeBlanc, my old friend, dead nearly 20 years. He was standing 15 feet away from me, holding a box of roofing nails. My stomach tightened. "Danny?" The man looked at me. No recognition. "Excuse me?" I stared at him. Same eyes, same crooked nose. Even the little scar beneath his chin that he had gotten from falling off a bicycle when we were kids. "I'm sorry," I said. "I thought you were somebody else." He smiled. "No problem." Then he turned back toward the cashier. I left without buying anything. Outside, I stood beside my truck, trying to calm down. New Orleans is a big city. People resemble other people. That's all. Then the hardware store door opened. Danny walked out. He crossed the sidewalk, stopped beside me, and whispered, "Ray." I turned. The smile was gone. Been a long time. I backed away. He walked past me. I watched him disappear into the crowd. I didn't follow. I'd learned that lesson. 2 weeks passed. Nothing happened. Then I went to a neighborhood bar with a friend. It was early evening. Maybe 20 people inside. Music playing, people laughing. Television over the bar showing a baseball game. Normal stuff. Safe. I was halfway through my drink when I noticed a woman sitting at the opposite end of the bar. Dark hair, red blouse, maybe 40 years old. She was staring at me. When our eyes met, she smiled. I looked away. A minute later, I glanced back. She was still watching me. Then she lifted her glass. 3 taps against the bar. My body went cold. She stood, walked toward me, and as she passed behind my chair, she whispered, "I only need to see you." Those were the exact words the borrower had spoken outside my house all those years ago. I spun around. The woman was walking toward the bathroom hallway. I followed. By the time I reached it, she was gone. There was no back door, no side exit, nothing. Just 2 bathrooms. I checked both. Empty. Then somebody laughed behind me. I turned. An old man was standing near the end of the hallway. He smiled, and for half a second his face moved. Not much, just enough. The eyes widened, the nose flattened, the cheeks seemed to slide beneath the skin. Then everything returned to normal. "Something wrong?" he asked. I didn't answer. I left. After that, I started noticing him everywhere. Not Danny, somebody else. A man I'd never seen before. Tall, maybe 6'2", dark jacket, gray hair, ordinary face. Kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after seeing it. First time was outside a coffee shop. Second time was inside a small grocery store. Third time was walking past a restaurant. Then I saw him sitting inside a bar on Decatur Street. Always alone, always watching me, never speaking. A week later I saw him again, except this time there were 2 of him. One was inside the bar, the other was standing across the street. Same clothes, same gray hair, same face, both looking directly at me. I backed into an alley. When I looked again, both were gone. That's when I understood. The borrower wasn't following me anymore. It was surrounding me. First time I saw myself was in the reflection of a shop window. I was walking through the French Quarter around dusk. People everywhere, tourists, street musicians, carriages, music spilling from open doors. I passed an antique shop and glanced at the glass. My reflection was there, but it wasn't walking. I stopped. The reflection stood still. I raised my right hand. It didn't. Instead, it smiled. I stumbled backward. Someone bumped into me. "Watch it, buddy." I turned for maybe 1 second. When I looked back at the window, my reflection was normal. I walked away fast. Then I saw myself inside the antique shop, standing behind the glass, watching me leave. After that, it got worse. I saw myself sitting alone inside a restaurant. I saw myself coming out of a liquor store. I saw myself riding past in a passenger seat of a car. Once, while stopped at a red light, I saw myself standing at the corner waiting to cross. He looked directly at me, then stepped into the street. Cars passed between us. When the traffic cleared, he was gone. A few nights later, I walked into a bar, and there I was, sitting 3 stools down, my face, my clothes, my hands. The thing lifted a glass. "Ray?" Nobody else reacted. I stared at it. "What do you want?" It smiled. "You." "I already know that." "No." It leaned closer. "You still don't understand." Then its face changed. Danny, Paul, Auguste, the woman in the red blouse, the gray-haired man. Then me again. Nobody around us noticed. It happened too quickly. What are you? I whispered. The thing smiled. Which one? My stomach dropped. What? It looked around the room. Which one of us are you talking to? I slowly turned. Bartender was staring at me. A man playing pool stopped moving. A woman near the jukebox turned around. An old man sitting beside the door looked up from his drink. One by one they smiled. The exact same smile. I ran. After that night, New Orleans changed for me. Every crowd became dangerous. Every face became a question. I'd walk through the French Quarter and wonder how many people were actually people. A waiter would stare half a second too long. A cashier would say my name even though I'd never met her. A man passing on the sidewalk would suddenly speak in Danny's voice. Sometimes strangers would whisper, Ray, then keep walking. I stopped going out at night, stopped going to bars, stopped eating at restaurants. Then it started happening during the day. I saw myself buying coffee. I saw Danny boarding a streetcar. I saw Auguste standing outside a church. Once I saw a woman in the red blouse sitting on a bench beside Bayou St. John. She patted the empty seat beside her. I kept driving. The thing that finally convinced me I was dealing with something worse than before happened inside a small restaurant. I was eating alone. A family at the next table asked their waitress to take a picture. She took their phone. They smiled, flashed. Normal, except I happened to be behind them. Later, one of the men came over. Hey, mister. I looked up. You know this guy? He showed me the photograph. The family was sitting at their table. I was visible behind them. But somebody was sitting across from me. Someone who hadn't been there. Me. The other Ray was staring directly into the camera, smiling. I looked across the table. Empty chair. Then I looked back at the phone. The other me was still there. Except now it wasn't smiling. Its mouth was open, and something dark seemed to be coming out of it. That night, I drove somewhere I swore I'd never return. I drove to Bayou St. John. I parked near the water. The place looked almost exactly as I remembered it. Dark water, cypress shadows, distant city lights. I stood on the bank. Come out! Nothing happened. I know you're here. The water moved. Then somebody stepped from behind a tree. It was me. Another appeared further down. Danny. Then the woman. Then the gray-haired man. Then Auguste. More figures appeared. 10, 20, maybe 30. People I'd seen in restaurants, shops, bars, streetcars, sidewalks. Every one of them standing silently along Bayou St. John. Then something happened that scared me worse than anything I'd experienced before. A man stepped from behind the others. It was the gray-haired man. He looked at me. No more running, Ray. I raised the shotgun I brought from the truck. Stay back, he smiled. You still think there's only one of us? People behind him began smiling. Then they all spoke together. There never was. I couldn't breathe. All those years I believed the borrower was one creature changing from person to person. One thing wearing different faces. I was wrong. There were many. Maybe dozens, maybe hundreds. And they'd been living among people for years. The gray-haired man stepped closer. Why me? I asked. He tilted his head. You saw us. That's it? No, he smiled. You survived. Behind him, the figures began changing. Faces sliding, bodies stretching, men becoming women, old becoming young, strangers becoming people I loved and knew. Then every one of them became me. 30 versions of Ray Broussard stood alone by Bayou St. John. Same face, same clothes, same eyes, One of them stepped forward. "Now tell us something." "What?" It smiled. "How do you know you're the original?" I raised the shotgun, then stopped, because suddenly I remembered something. Something Auguste had told me years ago. They borrowed voices first, then movements, then faces, then memories. I looked down at my hands. For the first time in my life, I couldn't remember where the scar on my left thumb came from. I'd always known. Some childhood accident, a knife, broken glass, something. But now the memory was gone. I looked across the river. 30 versions of me were smiling. One lifted his left hand. There was a scar across his thumb. He looked at it, then at me, and he said, "I remember." I backed away. Another ray laughed, then another. Soon all of them were laughing. I ran to my truck. I drove home, locked every door, covered every window. And I've been sitting here ever since. But about an hour ago, I heard somebody walking around outside. Then came 3 knocks. I didn't answer. A voice spoke through the door. My voice. "Ray, open up." I stayed quiet. Then another voice answered from somewhere behind me, inside the house. "Don't open it." I turned around. There was nobody there. Then I looked toward the hallway mirror. I'd forgotten to cover that one. Someone was standing in the reflection. It was me. Except the reflection wasn't looking at me. It was looking behind me and smiling. That's when a hand settled gently onto my shoulder, and my own voice whispered inside my ear, "Now, which one of us is the borrower?" I didn't turn around. I couldn't. That hand was still resting on my shoulder, not squeezing, not holding me, just touching me. And somehow that made it worse, because whatever stood behind me wasn't trying to hurt me. It wanted me to know it was there. I stared into the hallway mirror. My reflection was smiling. I wasn't. Behind me stood another Ray Broussard, same height, same clothes, same gray beginning to show in the beard. Even the little crease beside my left eye, perfect. He leaned closer to my ear. "You've been asking the wrong question." I swallowed. "Well, what question should I be asking?" His reflection looked directly at mine. "Which one of us came home from Bayou St. John?" Then the lights went out. I swung around. I couldn't see anything. I backed against the wall and reached for the lamp. My hand knocked something from the table. It hit the floor. Glass shattered. Then I heard footsteps moving through my house. Bare feet. Slow. Slap, slap, slap. They moved through the living room, then the kitchen, then they stopped. "Ray?" Danny's voice. I didn't answer. "Ray!" Now Auguste, then my brother Paul, then the woman from the bar. Finally my own voice. "Turn around." I didn't. Something brushed past me. Cold air moved across my face. Then the lights came back on. I was alone. The front door was still locked, windows closed, nothing disturbed, except the mirror. Across the glass, someone had written 4 words. "You have his memories." I stared at them. I touched the writing. It was wet. It was bayou water with mud. I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table until daylight, trying to remember my life. That's a strange thing to do. Try it sometime. Try remembering exactly what you did on your 10th birthday, what shirt you wore, who was there, what you ate. Most people can't. Memory isn't a recording. It's pieces, images, smells, it's voices, feelings. And suddenly I couldn't trust any of mine. I remembered Danny, but was Danny real? I remembered Auguste, but was Auguste real? I remembered fishing Bayou St. John that first night, But what happened before I arrived? What had I eaten that evening? Where had I been? I couldn't remember. Then I thought about something else, the scar on my thumb. I looked at it, still there, but I still couldn't remember how it got there. The other Ray could. That bothered me. It bothered me a lot. So I decided to find somebody who might remember for me. Paul, my brother. He lived outside of New Orleans, about an hour away. Hadn't seen him in almost 2 years. We talked occasionally, birthdays, Christmases, that kind of thing. I called him. Paul? Yeah? It's Ray. Silence. Not long, maybe 2 seconds, but long enough. Then Paul said, Where are you? Home. Another pause. You alone? Yeah. Stay there. The phone disconnected. Paul arrived an hour later. He didn't knock. He called me from his truck. Come outside. I walked onto the porch. Paul was standing beside his truck. He looked older than I remembered. But there was something else. He looked scared, not surprised. He looked scared. What's wrong? I asked. He stared at me. Lift your shirt. What? Lift your damn shirt, Ray. I did. Paul looked at my stomach. Then he stepped backward. What? He didn't answer. Paul, what are you looking for? A scar. What scar? His face went pale. You had your appendix out when you were 17. I looked down. There was no scar. I felt along my side. Nothing. Maybe it faded. No. Paul shook his head. It was there. I looked at him. He backed toward the truck. Paul. He opened the driver's door. Paul, wait. You're not my brother. Those words hit harder than any shotgun blast. Paul. My brother has a 6-inch scar right there. Listen to me. No. He climbed inside. I grabbed the door. Paul. Something's happening to me. He stared at my hand, then at my face. Where's Ray? I am Ray. Where's my brother? I am your brother. Paul jerked away. Then he said something I'll never forget. My brother disappeared 15 years ago. Everything inside me stopped. What? Paul stared at me. We buried you. I followed Paul to a cemetery outside New Orleans. Neither of us spoke. He parked. We walked between rows of graves until he stopped. I saw the name before I reached it. Raymond Broussard. My full name. Born 1964. Died 2011. I couldn't move. No. Paul stood behind me. They found your truck near Bayou St. John. No. Your blood was inside. Your blood was inside. No. They found a body 3 days later. I turned. You identified it? Paul nodded. It was you. I laughed. I don't know why. Fear, maybe? That doesn't make sense. I know. You've talked to me since then. Not until about 6 months after the funeral. I stared at him. What? You showed up at my house. He swallowed. You said you'd been hurt. Said somebody made a mistake. You knew everything Ray knew. I am Ray. Paul looked like he wanted to believe me. That's what hurt. He wanted to, but he couldn't. Then he added, Do you remember Mama's funeral? Yes. What song did they play? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I could see the church, the flowers, Paul standing beside me. I remembered crying, but the song, I couldn't remember the song. Paul asked another question. What was Danny's dog name? I knew Danny had a dog, a big brown mutt. Used to chase our bicycles. But its name, nothing came to mind. Paul whispered, You don't remember because you weren't there. I looked down at my grave. Then something moved between the tombs. A man, gray hair, dark jacket. Same man I'd seen all over New Orleans. He stood 50 yards away watching us. Paul, what? Get in the truck. The gray-haired man smiled. Then another man stepped from behind a tomb. Danny. Another appeared, Auguste. Then me. Paul saw them for the first time. Someone else saw them. Oh, God, run! We ran. We didn't stop until we were back inside his truck. Paul locked the doors. What the hell were those things? The borrowers. What? I'll explain later. Just drive. Paul started the truck. As we pulled away, I looked back. 4 figures stood beside my grave. Danny, Auguste, the gray-haired man, and me. The other Ray raised his hand. He waved, then pointed down at the grave. That night, Paul finally told me everything. The body they buried had been badly decomposed, but dental records matched, old injuries matched, fingerprints matched, DNA matched. Everything said the dead man was Ray Broussard, me. So what am I? Paul didn't answer. I stared at my hands, then I remembered Auguste's words. They borrow voices first, then movements, then faces, then memories. But maybe there was another step. Maybe eventually they didn't imitate a person. Maybe they became that person so completely, even they forgot what they were. The thought made me sick. Then Paul said, there's something else. What? The night before you disappeared, you called me. I don't remember that. I know. What'd I say? Paul looked toward the window. You said there were 2 of you. My skin prickled. What exactly did I say? Paul thought for a moment, then repeated the words. You said, Paul, if I come to your house tonight, don't let me inside. I stared at him, and about 20 minutes later, somebody knocked. My stomach tightened. Who? You. Did you open the door? No. What happened? You stood outside for almost an hour. Paul's voice became quieter. Kept begging me to let you in. Then what? You walked away. Toward where? Bayou St. John. We sat there for a long time. Then something occurred to me. Paul. Yeah? If that wasn't me outside your house, I stopped. Paul understood. Then maybe the real you was still alive? Exactly. Maybe the body in the grave wasn't me. Maybe the thing buried there was a borrower. Maybe I really was Ray. Or maybe I was the thing that knocked on Paul's door. There was only one place I might find the answer. And that was Bayou St. John. Again. Paul refused to let me go alone. We arrived a little before midnight. There was no wind blowing. There was no moon. The bayou looked like black glass. I brought the shotgun. Paul carried a flashlight. We walked to the place where I'd first seen Danny all those years ago. Then Paul stopped. You hear that? Water. Something moving through it. Not swimming, just something walking through water. Shallow water. Paul aimed the flashlight toward the bayou. At first we couldn't see anything. Then a head rose above the surface. My head. A man walked slowly out of the water. He looked exactly like me, except younger. The age I'd been 15 years ago. Water poured from his clothes. Paul whispered, Ray? The younger me looked at Paul. Don't listen to him. I raised the shotgun. Who are you? The younger Ray looked at me. Then he smiled sadly. The man they buried? My hands began shaking. You're dead? No. Paul saw your body. He saw what they wanted him to see. Who are they? The younger Ray looked across the bayou. Shapes were appearing beneath the trees, dozens, maybe more. The borrowers. What do they want? You? Why? He looked directly into my eyes. 'Cause you did something none of them ever did. What? You forgot you were one of them. I couldn't breathe. Paul backed away from me. I looked at him. Paul. He raised the flashlight like a weapon. Don't. The younger Ray stepped closer. You weren't copied from Ray. I shook my head. No, you copied him. No. 15 years ago. No. And something went wrong. Images suddenly flashed through my mind. Water, Danny's face, Auguste screaming, a man struggling beneath the bayou, my hands around someone's throat, his face, my face. I dropped the shotgun. No! The younger Ray continued. You took his face. Another memory, my body changing, bones moving, skin burning, a voice inside my head, Ray's voice, his memories pouring into me, his childhood, his mother, Paul, Danny, everything. Then, nothing. I fell to my knees. Paul whispered, oh God. I looked at my hands. They didn't look human anymore, not completely. The fingers seemed longer, the skin gray. Then they returned to normal. The younger Ray crouched in front of me. You became him so completely that you forgot what you were. Then who are you? He smiled. His face began changing. Danny, Auguste, Paul, the gray-haired man, then back to Ray. Does it matter? I grabbed the shotgun. He stepped backward. The shapes beneath the trees started laughing, all of them, hundreds of voices. Then the younger Ray said, you still don't understand. What? He pointed toward New Orleans. You think we've been trying to bring you back? He shook his head. We've been trying to keep you away. From what? For the first time, the borrowers stopped laughing. Every one of them turned toward the city. Then I heard it, far away, somewhere beyond the trees. 3 knocks. Impossible, but loud enough to roll across the entire city. The water beneath our feet trembled. Paul grabbed my arm. What was that? The younger Ray stared toward New Orleans. Fear appeared on his face, real fear. And if you've ever seen a monster become afraid, you understand what true terror feels like. What was that? I asked. The younger Ray whispered. The reason we learned to hide. Something moved beneath Bayou St. John. It wasn't swimming. It was rising. The water lifted several feet. Trees along the bank shook. Every borrower around us backed away. Some changed into animals. Others became people. Anything that could run. Then they fled. All except the younger Ray. He looked at me. You want to know whether you're a human? The water behind him continued rising. Yes. He shook his head. Tonight, it doesn't matter. Behind him, something enormous broke the surface. I couldn't see its body, only 2 eyes. They opened beneath the water, each one wider than the hood of Paul's truck. Paul whispered, Ray. I couldn't move. The younger Ray backed toward us. And for the first time since the nightmare began, a borrower stood beside me instead of against me. Then a voice came from beneath Bayou St. John. Not Danny, not Auguste, not mine. Something older. Something that made the bones in my chest vibrate when it spoke. I found you. The younger Ray grabbed my arm. Run! And this time, the borrowers ran with us. We ran, humans, borrowers, whatever the hell I was. For those few seconds, none of it mattered. Behind us, Bayou St. John was coming apart. Water rolled over the banks in black waves. Tree limbs snapped. Birds exploded from the darkness above us. And somewhere beneath all of it came a sound so deep I didn't hear it as much as I felt it. Then the voice came again. I found you. Paul stumbled. I caught him before he went down. Keep moving. What the hell is that thing? I don't know. The younger Ray was ahead of us. He stopped and turned. This way. He disappeared between two houses. Paul grabbed my arm. We're following that thing? You got a better idea? No. Then run. We followed. Behind us came another crash. I looked back. I wish I hadn't. Something was standing in Bayou St. John. Not completely. Only part of it had risen above the surface. At first I thought I was looking at a tree. Then it moved. A long black shape unfolded from the water. An arm. It reached toward the bank. The hand had too many fingers. And every finger ended in something that looked almost human. Not fingernails, faces. Tiny pale faces opening and closing their mouths. I turned away. Don't look at it, the younger Ray shouted. Why? 'Cause it remembers what it sees. Those words stopped something inside me. The borrowers copied people, but this thing copied whatever it looked at. We ran nearly 6 blocks before the younger Ray led us behind an old house. The place looked abandoned. Paint peeling, windows boarded, vines covering half the porch. He opened a cellar door. Inside. Paul stopped. No. The younger Ray stared at him. You can stay outside. Paul went in. So did I. The cellar smelled like damp earth and kerosene. There were people already inside, at least 20. Men, women, 2 children, an old woman, a police officer, a homeless man I'd seen near the French Quarter, and a gray-haired man who'd been following me. Paul pressed himself against the wall. Ray, I see them. People stared at us. Then one by one their faces changed. All borrowers. The old man became young. The officer became a man that I remembered seeing in one of the bars on Promenade Street. One of the children became something tall and thin before settling into the shape of a teenage girl. Paul whispered, Jesus Christ. Gray-haired man answered, He isn't coming. Paul looked at him. What? Not here. Then the gray-haired man looked at me. We need to talk. His name wasn't important. Borrowers didn't have names the way we do. Names belonged to people they became. But he told me I could keep calling him Auguste. Auguste was real, I asked. Yeah. What happened to him? The gray-haired man looked away. I already knew. You took him? No. Then where is he? He died. How? Protecting you. That surprised me. From what? The cellar shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Everyone went silent. Auguste pointed upward. That. Paul said, Somebody better start explaining. Auguste sat at an old wooden table. We were here before your city. How long? Long enough that the river has changed its path many times. I stared at him. What river? The Mississippi River. You're telling me the borrowers are ancient? No. He looked at me. We were human once. Nobody spoke. What happened? Auguste looked toward the ceiling. That happened. Hundreds of years ago, before New Orleans existed, people lived along these waters. They fished, they hunted, they raised families. Then something came up from beneath the water. Nobody knew where it came from. Somebody believed it had always been there. Sleeping, waiting. It didn't eat people. That would have been merciful. It took something else. Identity. Memory. Everything that made one person different from another. The people it touched began forgetting themselves. Names first, then families, then faces. Eventually, they became empty. Bodies without identity. So they learned to steal identities back. To survive, a face, a voice, a memory. They became borrowers. Paul looked at me. So that thing created them? Auguste nodded. And now? Now it wants them back. The collector. That's what they called it. The collector. Not because it collected bodies, it collected selves. Every memory a borrower stole eventually belonged to it. Every face, every voice, every life. Borrowers were pieces of the collector that had learned how to live independently, and it hated them for it. I looked around the cellar. Why did it awake? Nobody answered. Then I understood. Me. Auguste nodded. When you became Ray Broussard, you did something we believed impossible. What? You stopped borrowing. I looked at Paul, then back at Auguste. You became one person. The younger Ray stepped forward. You became human. Paul shook his head. He's not human. The younger Ray looked at him. Maybe not by birth. Then he pointed toward my chest. But ask yourself something. If he remembers loving your mother, grieving your father, growing up beside you, if he feels guilt, fear, love, what difference does his beginning make? Paul didn't answer. Neither did I. Auguste continued. The collector felt you separate from it. So it woke up? Yes. Another crash came from outside, closer. Knocking starts. Everyone froze. It came from upstairs. Paul whispered, somebody at the front door. Nobody moved. Then the knocking again, harder. A woman's voice called from outside. Ray! My mother's voice. She'd been dead 12 years. My legs nearly gave out. Raymond, baby, open the door. Paul's face went white. He heard it too. That's Mama. No. Ray, that's not Mama. The voice came again. Paul. Paul began crying. Please, let me in. Auguste grabbed him. Don't answer. Then another voice. Our father. Then Danny. Then people I didn't recognize. Hundreds of voices. All begging to be let inside. Finally, my voice. Open the door. Silence. Then the entire house shook. A black hand punched through the cellar wall. Brick exploded across the room. Someone screamed. The hand grabbed one of the borrowers. The borrower changed instantly. Man, woman, dog, child, old man. Dozens of forms in seconds. Didn't matter. The black fingers tightened. Then something terrifying happened. The borrower stopped changing. Its face became blank, smooth. No eyes, no mouth, nothing. The collector pulled it through the wall. Gone. Auguste shouted, Move! A hidden doorway opened behind a shelf. Everyone rushed through. Paul and I followed. The passage led underground. Old brick. Maybe drainage tunnels, maybe older. I didn't know. Behind us, the collector tore into the cellar. We moved through tunnels beneath the city. Above us was New Orleans. Music, bars, hotels, people laughing. Nobody knew what was moving underneath them. The borrowers knew these tunnels. They used them for generations. Then we reached a large underground chamber. Water covered the floor. In the center stood an old stone statue. Not a church, not exactly. Paul shined his flashlight across the walls. Faces were carved everywhere, thousands. Who are they? He asked. Auguste answered. Everyone we've ever been. I walked closer. Men, women, children, faces from different centuries. Then I saw one I recognized, Danny. Beside him, Auguste. And beside Auguste, me, Ray Broussard. I touched the carving. The stone was cold. Why is my face here? Auguste didn't answer. I turned. Why is my face here? The younger Ray spoke. Because you've been here before. The chamber disappeared. Not physically, inside my head. Suddenly I was somewhere else. 15 years earlier, I was at Bayou St. John. I saw Ray Broussard, the real Ray. He was on his knees, bleeding. and I stood above him. Not human. Gray skin, long arms, no real face. I was a borrower. Ray looked at me. He wasn't afraid anymore. He was dying. Then he said something I'd forgotten. Take it. Creature I'd been tilted his head. Ray touched his chest. My life. He called blood. Don't let that thing have me. Behind us, something moved beneath Bayou St. John, the collector. Ray knew. He knew exactly what would happen if it reached him. So he gave himself to me. Not just his face, everything. His memories, his love for Paul, his childhood, his fear, his love for his mother, his father, everything. His mistakes, his soul, if such a thing could be given. I didn't murder Ray Broussard. He chose me. The memory ended. I fell against the stone wall. Paul caught me. What'd you see? I looked at him. Your brother saved me. Paul stared. What? He gave me his memories. Tears filled my eyes. And I think he knew what would happen. August nodded. He did. He knew. The real August knew. Why didn't you tell me? Because if you remember what you were, the collector could find you. I laughed bitterly. Well, that worked out. No. August looked toward the tunnel. It worked for 15 years. A roar traveled through the underground passage. Water rippled around our ankles. Collector was coming. Paul raised a shotgun. What kills it? August looked at him. Nothing. Everything dies, not this. Then what do we do? August looked at me. We give it what it came for. Paul stepped between us. No. August ignored him. One borrower became independent. One borrower became a single identity. Me. If it takes you back, it may sleep again. Paul raised a shotgun toward August. Find another plan. I looked at my brother. For the first time since the cemetery, he had called me something without words. Brother. The water rose, ankle deep, then knee deep. Collector entered the chamber. Not all of it. There wasn't enough room. Black limbs pushed through the tunnel. Faces appeared beneath his skin. Thousands. Every person it had ever taken. They whispered together. Ray. I stepped forward. Paul grabbed me. No. Maybe this ends it. You don't know that. No. I looked at him. But Ray gave his life once already. I smiled. Maybe it's my turn. Paul tightened his grip. You're Ray too. Those 3 words nearly broke me. The collector reached toward us. August shouted. Borrowers scattered. I stepped into the water. Hey! The creature stopped. Every face beneath its skin turned toward me. You want me? The chamber became silent. Then the collector answered. Yes. Come get me. What the collector didn't know. It reached for me and suddenly I understood everything. Collector believed it was connected to me. A piece of that had broken away. But it was wrong. Ray Broussard had given me something the collector had never understood. He had given me a choice. Collector took identities. Borrowers stole identities. But Ray had given his freely. That made mine different. I wasn't carrying Ray's memory. They were mine now. His love was mine. His grief was mine. His brother was mine. Collector touched my forehead and screamed. Every light in the chamber went out. Memories exploded through me. Not mine, its. Thousands of lives. Thousands of stolen people. I saw them all. Then they saw me. And somehow they understood. The collector had spent centuries taking people into itself. Now, for the first time, someone inside was fighting back. Give them back, I heard Danny, then Auguste, then voices from hundreds of years ago. They whispered the same words. Give them back! Collector recoiled. I grabbed its hand. Paul screamed my name. The creature tried to pull away. I held tighter. Faces pushed outward beneath its black skin. Give us back! The chamber shook. Cracks split the walls. Water erupted upward. One face tore free from the collector. Then another. Not bodies, something else. Lights, memories, pieces of people. Thousands rose around us. The collector screamed. The sound shook New Orleans. Then the stone floor collapsed. I fell into black water, down, down. No idea which direction was up. Something grabbed my leg. I kicked. Another hand caught my arm. I opened my eyes underwater. Faces surrounded me. Hundreds. But they weren't attacking. They were rising. I rose with them. Then somebody grabbed my shirt. It was Paul. He pulled me toward the surface. We broke through. I gasped. The chamber was gone. We were in Bayou St. John. I don't know how. Maybe the tunnels connected. Maybe the collector changed something. Paul and I crawled onto the bank. Dawn was beginning over New Orleans. Quiet, beautiful, normal. Auguste climbed from the water further down. Then the younger Ray. Then others. Borrowers alive. Collector was gone. Nobody talked about what had happened. There were reports of small earthquakes, broken water lines, flooding. People around Bayou St. John reported strange noises. New Orleans went on being New Orleans. Paul stayed with me. For the first time in years, we talked about our childhood. Some memories I knew, some I didn't. But Paul stopped testing me. He stopped asking questions only Ray would know. One evening, we sat outside. Paul handed me a beer. You know something? What? I don't care anymore. What about? Which Ray you are? I looked at him. He shrugged. My brother's sitting right there. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my voice. For several weeks, I saw no borrowers. No Danny, no gray-haired man. Nobody watching me from shop. Nobody watching me from shop windows. Nobody sitting 3 stools down in a bar. For the first time in 15 years, I felt alone, in a good way. Then one evening, I walked into a small bar near the French Quarter. I ordered a drink. The bartender set it down. I looked into the mirror behind the bottles. My reflection looked normal. Moved when I moved, smiled when I smiled. I almost laughed. Then somebody sat beside me, an old man. I'd never seen him before. He ordered whiskey. We sat quietly. Then he said, "You did a dangerous thing." I looked at him. "What?" He took a drink. Set all those memories loose. My heart began pounding. "Who are you?" He smiled. Not the borrower's smile, something different, older. Thought the collector was keeping those souls prisoner. Wasn't it? He looked into the mirror. No. My reflection disappeared. So did his. The mirror showed only the empty bar behind us. The old man finished his whiskey, then he stood. The collector wasn't their prison. He placed money on the counter. It was their cage. I grabbed his arm. What does that mean? He looked down at my hand, then slowly back at me. It means there are things worse than borrowers. He walked toward the door. Wait! He stopped. What did I release? The old man turned, and every light in the bar flickered. For half a second, I saw his true reflection. Not a man. Something with enormous black wings folded around a body made of smoke. Then the light steadied. He was an old man again. He smiled. Not what? The front door opened by itself. The old man stepped outside. Then he looked back at me. Who? He disappeared into New Orleans that night. I sat there staring at the doorway. Then somebody at the opposite end of the bar screamed. A woman pointed toward the mirror. Words were appearing across the glass, written from the other side, slowly, one letter at a time. "Thank you, Ray." Then another line appeared beneath it. "We remember the way home." I backed away. Outside, church bells began ringing across New Orleans. Every church, all at once. It was midnight. It wasn't Sunday. There was no reason for them to ring. Then the bartender looked toward the front window. "Hey," I followed his eyes. People were standing in the street, hundreds of them, completely still, all facing the same direction, toward Bayou St. John. Then, one by one, they began walking, and somewhere far beneath the city, something knocked 3 times.